Hello, everybody. Welcome to another adventure in history. I'm your host, Shane McInnes, and it's viewer request night. That's right. All of the viewers got to pick a topic for tonight, and they chose the lovely land of Australia and the land down under. So that's what our topic for tonight is, but the show itself is Adventures in History, where we talk about history stuff. And I talk about history stuff, and you get to talk about history stuff too with a guy that's sort of more or less trained in this topic. And we get to hang out and have some fun and make bad pop cultural references and puns and all that fun stuff. But I hope you all are doing really well. We've got Moose in the house. Steve, yeah, I saw that Steve rated Cat. I left my my account running up front while I was kind of running around doing stream prep stuff. You have the big stumpy Fongo arms, yeah. Hey Bubba, how's it going? Welcome, my friend. Woo, Australia, indeed. Bring on all of the horrible Australia stereotypes. And G'days and Vegemites and crocodile hunters and all of that fun stuff. Shrimps on the Barbie and such. So, yeah, that's tonight. Don't bother, it's raining here at the moment. Hey, Magnificent, welcome. Magnificent, are you in Australia? That would be really neat if you were. I think I remember some people being in here when we were talking about doing Australia, but I can't remember exactly who it was. Well, welcome regardless of where you are in the world tonight. I hope that the world is treating you well. Hey, you are from Australia. Well, this is going to be hopefully a lot of stuff that is kind of old shoe for you. Things that you can just pick up and run with. And you can add some nice flavor text. I would actually be very interested in how this material gets taught in Australian primary schools. Hey, Ipsy Veris, an Aussie wouldn't be caught dead using shrimp. It's prawns or bust, mate. Yeah, those are the bad stereotypes that catch you doing things that are not actually accurate. I do quite like prawns. I'm a big seafood fan in general, though. If it comes out of the ocean or out of the water, I'm probably going to like it. The only thing that I really can't cut is shellfish. For some reason, clams and oysters and mollusks just don't do it for me. I don't know why. It might be a texture thing, but it's also sort of a flavor mixed with the texture. You don't care for crustaceans? That's okay. I do like crab legs. My father-in-law is actually quite excellent at boiling soft shell crabs. So eating soft shell crabs is a bit of a chore. You have to sort of work at it to get just a little bit of the crab meat out. But it's a good time, right? Half of the fun is making yourself look silly while you're trying to pick little bits of crab meat out of this crab, right? If you ever come through Baltimore, oh yes. I am well aware of the Virginia, Maryland crab cake. I've spent quite a bit of time, well, not quite a bit of time. I've been to Washington, D.C. a lot. And one of my favorite things to do back before they sort of moved everything around was go down to the fish market and get steamed crabs and eat them right there on the banks and have crab cakes. So I will take you up on that, Moose. That's a great offer. Australians are all bilingual. Our first language is profanity. Well, you joke, but I was speaking with my mods today, trying to come up with a title for the stream, and one of the suggestions that came out was something like, and I'm quoting here, like, quote, call the stream, quote, something, CUNT. And I'm like, I think that would be accurate, but probably not politically correct. So, yeah, I wasn't going to go there. I'm still trying to keep the the PG rating on the stream here. So we went with "Who Can It Be Now?" Dun, 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 dun. And there's a bit of a double layer Easter egg pun there, if you know anything about that song and who sings it. So, Snow White lookalike. Are we talking about Aussies? Yes, we are talking about Aussies tonight. History of Australia, the lovely land that is here on the map. Australia, Tasmania, and New Zealand. Which for the majority of the period of time we'll be talking tonight are sort of all clumped together in one larger British colonial adventure. So, with no further ado, let's get cracking and let us talk about Australia. I'm actually going to turn off the borders here. I don't usually like using the borders. I kept it on today just so that we can get a little bit of an idea. And we can also kind of zoom in here on Australia itself and see all of the different provincial boundaries that are applicable. So Southern Australia and New South Wales and all of that fun stuff. But for the majority of the time, we'll just be talking, and we don't need these guys. Plus, the yellow is a little bit much. I'm honestly shocked you didn't call it "It's the History of a Land Down Under." Yeah, we went through that, but I felt like it might be a little bit too on the nose. One of the titles was "I Went to a Land Down Under," talking about like going down and discovering Australia. Well, not discovering it, but like the Europeans figuring it out. Not too close. My garden is untidy. We won't zoom in on anyone's house. We'll keep everybody's anonymity. You know what I mean? Yeah. You better run. You better take cover. Where women roar and men chunder. No, bring all of the Aussie pride. I love that. It's going to make this so much more fun. I'm honestly very much glad that we have native Aussies in the room tonight, because that is going to be awesome stuff. Was there ever a mega concert with AC/DC, Midnight Oil, Men at Work, In Excess, Kylie Minogue? Yes, please share as many fun Aussie facts as you would like. Hey Magus, what's up? Welcome. Any Aussie facts or welcome. Native Aussies? We have some native Aussies in the chat tonight, yeah. So, okay. So when we're discussing the colonization of Austria, we have a side query. Given the word/spelling of colonel, do you know why it isn't pronounced colonization? So the pronunciation of colonel is one of those words in English that has multiple historical languages, and effectively, when we say it in English, we don't say it the right way. We say it the right way for English, but we don't say it the right way historically, because English is not one language. It's 4 languages hiding in a trench coat trying to buy alcohol. That's pretty much what the English language is. Does anyone know the song "Am I Ever Going to See Your Face Again"? I do not know that. I do not know that because a good way to find an Aussie is to sing the lyric, "Am I ever going to see your face again?" And Aussies go, "No way, go right off." The best description you've ever heard of English. I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
Vern.
I'm Spartacus.
Vern, thank you so much for the subscription, my friend. Welcome to the chat. Hope you're having a good one. And welcome, Green Eyes Mio. Yes, like Österreich. Exactly. English is such an interesting conglomeration of various different etymological histories. Okay, so I'm going to have to... am I ever going to see your face again? Okay, I'm going to have to try to remember that. Oh, Snow White, would you throw that in the Discord? And that way I'll go look at the Discord after chat or after stream, and then I'll remember to do all of the stuff. Sometimes I try to remember everything that's going on in the middle of a stream, and it just... I get to talking about something else, and one thing drives out another, as Barleyman Butterbur would say. Thank you much. Okay, so when did Europeans discover Australia? This is not anonymous gifter. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. Thank you very much, anonymous gifter. And Bubba, welcome to the adventure, my friend. I hope you enjoy your adventure hats emotes. And your ad-free viewing. Okay, so when did Europeans actually discover Australia? The question is a little bit more difficult than it might seem, mostly because of... Oh man, we're just going to blow up the hype train. I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. Magus. Thank you, good sir, for the subscription, and welcome to the adventure once again, and thank you for setting off that hype train. Hey, Arcadian, welcome. Toot, toot. Okay. Thank you all so much for your generosity. That's amazing. And here we go. We just moved up to the level 2. And for some reason...
You shall have camels,
oh man,
horses, and provisions, desert vehicles, and tanks. You're welcome.
Thank you, Moose, for your Prime Gaming sub. And I don't know why it did not set off the alarm. But Moose, thank you for being Spartacus, and welcome to the adventure. And Magus, thank you for the bits. Much appreciated. You all are far too kind. I get a little flustered when people get nice. So, thank you all.
Shall have camels, horses, an armed escort, provisions,
Desert vehicles, tanks. You're welcome. Thank you, Green Eyes Mio. With the super cute little, or those Doge bits. The cute little, the little, what is it? Oh my gosh, I'm losing my words here. Corgi bits. It's a dingo. It's a dingo bit. Maybe the dingo stole your baby. Oh, so appropriate. Dingo bits. Well done. Oh man. Okay. So Shane is for Klimt. I am for Klimt. You all are far too generous, and beyond you all appreciating what I do, I appreciate you all hanging out with me. I always say stuff like it's very hard for me to express how much I appreciate you all coming to hang out. But I really do appreciate you all coming to hang out. Oh, so we're ranking ancient wizards. Merlin, Abe no Seimei, and Cersei. Well, I have to put Abe no Seimei first because he's actually a real person. Cersei. She's in a lot of comic books that I read. She shows up a lot in DC Comics as a bad guy for the Justice League Dark. So I know that's not technically mythology, but Cersei as a comic book character is probably going to lean. That makes me put Merlin last, but that's not really fair because I like all of these characters. Yeah. It's a very close 1, 2, 3, though. Historical fact: Dingo Stole My Baby. Name of the band Oz had in Buffy the Vampire Show. I now remember that from so long ago. Oh, Bubba, I'm a giant fan of Justice League Dark. I haven't seen the Merlin TV show. I know everybody tells me I need to go watch the Merlin TV show, but I have not actually watched the Merlin TV show. There are too many things that come out that I haven't been able to see. And for about 2.5 years, when I was getting my master's for history, I was effectively under social lockdown. I didn't watch very much. I didn't play very many games. So if it came out between about 2012 and about 2016, I have it's a dice roll if I've seen it. The show with Colin Morgan from 10 years ago. Maybe. Maybe so. But I again, I haven't seen it. But yeah, I love Justice League Dark. I love all of the DC Magic characters. I like them way more than like the DC mainline characters. Like, and I know this might be blasphemous, but you can kind of have Superman if you want him. I really don't care about Superman that much. But you give me Constantine or Swamp Thing or Animal Man or Madame Xanadu. Oh yeah, that's the good stuff. I wish they did more with Blue Devil. Oh man, I love Blue Devil. Yeah. Blue Devil's a good character. He was in Shadow Pact. I don't know, Bubba, if you've ever read Shadow Pact. It was written by Bill Willingham, the guy that went on to be very famous for Fables. It was a short-run series, had maybe 20-something comics in the like early 2000s. Yes! Detective Chimp. There we go. Detective Chimp. Yes, love Detective Chimp. How appropriate would me come into Shane? It would be very appropriate. You met one of the creators of Blue Devil. So you met either the writer or artist on a Firestorm comic, because that is where Blue Devil first showed up, in Firestorm. Anyway, I could sit here and talk about comic books all night long. Hey, Mayor Barzini, welcome. So I got some emotes. So I got a little choo-choo emote here with a Hype Train swipe emote. So thank you all that participated in Hype Train. Very much appreciated. Okie dokie. So let's talk Australia. When did it get discovered by Europeans? Again, this is a little bit in question. Mostly because of some research that has been done starting around the 1960s and early 1970s. There is a bit of a question mark as to whether or not the Portuguese were the first discoverers of Australia. And I don't know if I'm sold on this, but there is kind of a rumor that there was a Portuguese explorer, a guy named Cristóbal de Mendonça, that maybe found the northern coast of Australia. And this was in the 1520s. And there's some rumors of this island that they called Java la Grande, or Great Java. Java being an island down here in the Indonesian island range. So Great Java, could this be Australia? The answer is probably not, but maybe. The Aboriginals should have looked down. They could have discovered it. Well, see, that's the thing. We're talking about Europeans discovering it. Of course, Aboriginal people ended up in Australia somewhere between 50 and 45,000 years ago, after migrating all the way down through this big continent, which would have been land. So most of this would have been land, as would have most of this. Would have been a big continent back then called Sunda. So they had to cross a little bit of water, and probably did so on very small rafts, or maybe even floating over logs. But yeah, people have been in Australia for tens of thousands of years. Why are the islands immediately north tropical and Australia itself the Mad Max heck hole? So a lot of that has to do with the way that the currents of the Indian Ocean flow. and the way that they pull air and moisture around. So the the current is sucking moisture out of this region and dumping it over here. So the currents are going to continue to move air masses and things like that around. And this is part of the larger sort of monsoon system that does the same sort of thing over here, where it pulls moisture out of this area and dumps it over here in India. The ocean currents of the Indian Ocean are actually rather violent and can have some pretty nasty cyclones, which is what they call hurricanes. Kaylee, what are you doing? I know, you just came in from outside and you're probably, yes, you're wet. I'm in the middle of something. I'm trying to do a stream. Can you go up front and play with Brittany? Go play with Brittany. Can you go play with Brittany? Go up front. I can't play with you right now. I'm being petitioned to play by the puppy, who wants so badly for me to go play with her. There she... Hey, Kaylee, come here now. Come here. Hey, they actually want to see you. Kaylee. Now, I sent her up front, and now... Hold on a second. Okay, here she comes again. Come here. Come and see me. Come here. Come here. Come here. Oh, yes, they love you. They love the puppy. Oh, I know. Are you going to give me little growls? Huh? Is this what you wanted? Did you just want to be attended? Did you just want me to see the puppy? Oh, hello. I see the puppy. I see you. Oh, yes. I see you, and you have bad puppy breath. Oh, goodness. Okay, now you go up front. Can I have your toy? Yep, there we go. Oh, there's the Bork. The Bork emote. From Emmy. Okay. Make up your mind, human indeed. Toying with a dog's emotions. No, not the chicken tonight. Just the remains of the squirrel. She has managed to rip out most of the stuffing of the squirrel and destroy the squeaker in the squirrel. So now it's just a husk of its former self. Okay, so let's make some progress. So, we don't know if Java La Grande was a real thing. We don't know if the Portuguese really found Australia or not. There's very little conclusive evidence. Someone stabbed you today? Okay, Tuna, now we're going to have to explain why you got stabbed. You couldn't be more happy. Oh, you got a vaccine. Oh, hey, nice. I got one last week. Made my arm hurt like crazy for like a couple of days. We don't know if we found Australia either. Well, we do know that some Dutch explorers found Australia, and the guy that did so was a guy named Willem Janszoon. I spelled that wrong. William Janszoon. This is the Dutch explorer credited with conclusively discovering Australia for European powers, and he landed up at this little point right here. He was actually trying to sail over here towards New Guinea, but landed right up here on this little point of Australia and was like, okay, so this is definitely something new. This was in 1606, and the specific location that he landed was a place called Cape York, the Cape York Peninsula, which is this guy right here. So this was the first location, and it did not take very long for subsequent Dutch explorers to start moving around down here and trying to explore the subcontinent or the continent itself. They realized really quickly it was a lot bigger than they thought. And so what they decided to do was basically just claim the whole thing. And so the Dutch are actually going to claim Australia to begin with. And what we see here is a map, and this is a very, very old map. I was very excited to find it. This particular map is from 1632. And what we see here is a Dutch map of the outline of what is what they called New Holland. So you can see again, they are starting up here, and they are moving down the coastline. This is over the course of multiple different expeditions. This is not all just Jansoon. New Howlet? Question mark. Yeah, Hollandia Nova. But you can tell that they had not really done very much over this way. You can see that there's a little bit of this being mapped, and there is a little bit of New Zealand over here that has been mapped. But the majority of sort of this stuff on the other side of the tropic line is empty. So who's going to start filling this in? Who's going to be the ones that actually get all of this stuff lined up? Well, it's going to be this guy. And you go, who in the devil is that handsome gentleman? And his dashing neck ruff. Well, that guy is the Dutch explorer Abel Tasman. And in 1644, he's going to be the guy that starts sailing around the other side of New Holland and discovers that Tasmania is actually a second island. Correct, Tasmania. That's him. He's also going to do some exploration here along the coastline. That's him. Bum-ba-da-da, the original Tasmanian devil. Oh yeah, he's a little hectic. Yeah, he's gonna kick up some business with that neck ruff going there. Right? Ooh. Okay, so this is going to get everybody in a lot more kind of stable level. The expeditions of Abel Tasman are going to fill in a lot of the blank areas of the map, and this is going to get a lot of other people sort of interested in maybe going down to start some settlements. And his explorations are going to be pretty influential in the larger Dutch world. But here's the thing. They go down and they start looking around, and most of the land that they had explored was, again, this sort of northern and southern, this western part over here. You loved when Julie Andrews ran through the mountains of Australia singing The Sound of Music before Hitler got there. Yeah, slightly different continent, but they did get invaded during that same war, but by the Japanese. But that's a whole other story that we'll talk about a little bit later. Dutch colonies don't usually go well for the people who were there when they got there. That's true, Tuna. That's true. Colonies don't usually go well. That's also true. I have never been to Australia. I would actually really love to go down there. My father-in-law spent most of a year working in Australia. Did a little bit of work in Sydney, some in Melbourne, but was mostly in Perth. And had a good time. And sent back some lovely pictures and brought me back some pretty cool stuff, including a didgeridoo. That's like an actual playable didgeridoo. I need to get some more wax for the mouthpiece so that I can continue to play it. Yeah, colonization doesn't go great for the people that are native, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as well. Yeah, the Dutch. There we go. Anyway, so the people that are going to sort of make the final claim on this is actually the Dutch East India Company. So the Dutch East India Company was one of the largest companies on the planet at the time. And they sent some people down and they started looking around the land that they were familiar with. And it's a bit insulting. So all of our Aussie friends in the room tonight, this might be a little insulting to you, or you might find it humorously accurate. I don't know. But the Dutch East India Corporation report effectively says, there's nothing of value here. It's not worth our time. And when the Dutch East India Company, who was notorious for wringing profits out of basically anything, said Australia didn't have any good land, it wasn't worth their time, the rest of the people in Holland kind of just went, okay, well, that's enough. Don't worry about that. Pikachu shock face. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so weren't they exploring the wrong coast? That's the thing. They were exploring the sort of wrong, well, not necessarily the wrong coast, but they were exploring the more deserty part of Australia, the western half. That's here on the border of the Pacific. I'm sorry, the Indian, and then down here. They found a little bit of land down here, but they're like, but they had not explored very much of this at all. So when the Dutch sort of pass on New Holland, it still retains the name New Holland, but it's really not going to be particularly explored very much more until a guy named James Cook. This is the very famous Captain Cook, and he looks like this. Bum, bada, bum. Yes, that's the part where, yes, it's like the desert in Spaceballs, right? We ain't found nothing. So this is Captain Cook. And he is British. And the British are going to have an interesting take on the potential of what they called Australia, this other side of the island. And the big issue that England was facing, or the Great Britain was facing at the time, was that they had a lot of people in jail. The 1700s was a very tumultuous period of time for the British at home and also abroad. Of course, the American Revolution happens in the 1770s. By the early 1780s, the British had lost some of their most productive colonies here in the North American New World. And this is going to start making them look for potential other avenues. And in 1770, James Cook is going to sail around and he's going to map out the eastern coast of Australia. He's going to name it New South Wales, after Wales in England. And he's going to claim that eastern half of the island for Great Britain. Once the island is completely mapped out, you're actually going to see two other countries, the French and the Swedish, are going to make land claims on various parts of Australia. But neither country really follows through very much with that. I bet his hair was messier after a year or two at sea. This place looks designed by God to kill man. Let's make it a massive jail. Because you could put people in jail for owing you money. Yes. Send the Scots here. Yes. All of that is accurate. Hey, Ginger Cheeks, welcome. So by 1770, the British have already started thinking about what the promise of Australia could be. But especially after the American Revolution is settled, the British are going to need something else to do. They're going to need something to kind of try to replace that funding gap. They were extracting a lot of money from the American colonies. One of the things that they're going to turn to is India, which is actually going to end up being sort of the centerpiece of the British Empire for quite some time. But Australia is another angle for this. And it's also a one-up on France because, why not one-up the French? They lost the midnight train to Georgia. They did. They lost a lot of stuff. So in 1787, they're going to send what's called the First Fleet. The First Fleet had about 15 ships, and it had about 1,500 people totally, but about 780 of those people were convicted criminals. And as Kelly said, some of these criminals were in debtor's prison, but some of them were actually violent criminals, people that were, armed robbers, murderers, what have you. And these people get loaded up on ships and they get sent down to Australia. They're going to have a little bit of a better idea of things because of new maps, like this one. This map is one produced in 1787, the same year that the first fleet set sail, and you can see the notable landmarks that they have here. One important one is this region right here called Botany Bay. Botany Bay is going to be the site of one of the first and biggest, and still one of the most important, settlements in all of Australia, which is the capital of New South Wales. At the time. Now, later they built Canberra, but that's the whole thing. Anyway. Con! I don't know what I'm supposed to be reacting to right here. Anyway, the particular location... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to show you this on the map here, and I'm still showing you the image map. Let me switch back over to this. So we're looking at right over here on our map, and the area that we're going to settle in is Sydney. Sydney, Australia, the famous city where you have the very, very famous Opera House. I've missed some stuff. Nationalism, sure. Starring Sir Nicholas of Cage. Ha ha ha. Khan was sent off on a small ship called the Botany Bay. There we go. Okay, sorry. It makes sense. I wasn't putting two and two together. Okay, so they're going to show up in 1787. The first fleet is, just to be honest, not going to do so well. They're going to have a lot of trouble. It turns out that convicted felons don't necessarily have a lot of diverse job skills. And I'm not trying to insult these individuals. I'm just trying to say many of these people did not know how to farm. Many of these people did not know how to do stuff like, blacksmith or fish or hunt. And they're sort of sent down here to set up this colony, which is at Sydney, which, by the way, Lord Sydney was the Secretary of State of Britain at that time. Sydney is named after him, the Secretary of State. And they make this landing at Sydney on what is called Australia Day, which is January 26th, 1788. So they're going to set up this colony. They're going to have some trouble right off the bat. And the guy that is sort of tasked with setting this colony at rights is a guy named Arthur Phillip. Also, they had women. They had no... Oh, yes, right. So the original ships were mostly men. Now, later on, they do start sending women prisoners as well. Arthur Phillip. Let's look at Arthur Phillip. He's this gentleman. So Arthur Phillip is the first governor of the New South Wales colony. And he's going to be the guy that's basically trying to keep all these people in line. Kind of helps with, colonizing place, being able to have kids. It does. So Arthur Phillip is going to be in a bit of a pickle, because without more people and without more supplies and without women, this colony is effectively doomed. So it takes a couple of resupply runs. There is a second fleet and a third fleet, and Arthur Phillip is going to do some exploration up and down the coastline and also into some of the internal parts, mostly looking for good farmland. They build a couple of other small cities that are out from Sydney, and they're going to end up getting their first actual settlers, people that aren't convicts, people that are coming to Australia to make a new life for themselves in 1793. And from that point forward, let me see. I'm losing some stuff. Nice punchable face. Even though they referred to ships in the feminine context, indeed. You feel like there should be a sitcom here? At one point, do they run into the locals? Pretty quickly. Arthur Phillip is actually going to be sort of. Well, okay, so how do I say this the right way? He recognizes how badly his colony is running. And he, as an individual, doesn't necessarily want to provoke trouble with the Aboriginal people of Australia. However, he is at odds with the military regiment that has also been sent to the colony because, again, remember, convicts, where we go, who can it be now? Con being con. You get the joke. So he and the military leadership are not going to have very good relationships together. He wants to do stuff their way or his way, and they are going to run things their way. And the military unit that's in Sydney is pretty much going to be, by the way, it's called the New South Wales Corps. These groups don't get along. And this is going to be what actually triggers some of the first conflicts between the Aboriginal people and the Australian settlers. So you're going to start seeing some early violence between New South Wales Corps and Aboriginals, where Aboriginals are fighting to hang on to sacred locations and part of their land, but the colonies are trying to expand, and inevitably the locals are going to get shot, and this is going to create uncomfortable relationships because, land appropriation. Here's the ultimate question, though. Through all of this, Wooden's phrase, that's not a knife, this is a knife. Oh, man. When do they find Crocodile Dundee? That's not until the early 80s. So, at this period of time, the late 1790s are going to be when they sort of hit a level threshold of being able to self-sustain. You start seeing some early trade ships from other countries showing up in Sydney Harbor. They get some visits from the French and some visits from the Dutch. Now, they don't really have necessarily a lot of goods to trade, but they do what they can. But what's really going to make these colonies grow is the continual stream of convicts. And I'm going to skip a little bit ahead. Australia is going to receive convicts from England all the way through 1868. So almost 80 years worth of convicts being sent here. They're going to send 161,000 convicts to Australia. And yes, it's very much a prison island for a lot of people. They're going to settle other parts of the island. They're going to build prison colonies out in the west, prison colonies further down in the southern part of the coastline, also up the eastern coastline. There are going to be 7 or 8 of these big prison colonies, and they're just going to keep sending prisoners over and over and over. But what this is really getting us towards is a big brewing conflict. And I say brewing conflict because it's a bit of a pun here. So it turns out that one of the things that the colony of Australia could do was brew rum and distribute rum, not necessarily on the black market, but more or less without the oversight of the territorial governors. And the military is going to decide that they sort of want to be in charge of the rum distribution. Snow White lookalike knows where we're going. So the kind of quasi-smuggling and the distribution of rum is going to be a big issue. Yeah, of course the military wants the rum. They want to be the ones that distribute the rum. Oh, you legit studied Aussie history. Oh, awesome. You probably know this stuff better than I do then. And by the way, I'm just sort of trying to hit the high points. We're going to fast forward through some of this stuff. Most people in the United States know basically zero about Australian history. So we don't get any of this in our schooling. So I'm doing a very general sort of high point along the way discussion. So what we're going to do? Well, the territorial governors end up getting in a little bit of a pickle, and they send letters back to the British asking for some perhaps stronger or stiffer necked leadership. And the British are going to send a guy named William Bligh, who knew quite a bit about mutinies because this guy was the captain on the ship the Bounty of the famous Mutiny on the Bounty. So William Bligh gets sent down to be the new territorial governor of Australia. And he's supposed to sort of whip everybody in shape because he's a good leader and he's got stir. He looks like this, by the way. This is William Bligh, Captain William Bligh, Governor of New South Wales. So Bligh shows up, and right off the bat, he's going to try to whip these military New South Wales Corps leaders in shape. I'm going to run all the trading. I'm going to do all of this stuff. I'm going to do all of that stuff. And the military goes, no, you're not. And this is what's going to be called the Rum Rebellion. And this is in 1808, by the way. Basically what happens here is the New South Wales Corps storm the Capitol building, get Captain Bligh, drag him out to a ship, and keep him prisoner on a ship floating in the harbor for about 2 years. And while that's going on, they effectively run the colony. So Bligh, the guy that's supposed to like, hey, I'm going to whip you all into shape, lasts very, very brief period of time. Am I the only person that thinks Toby Jones would kill him? We have a rebellion over booze, living up to your stereotype. Hey, now, the United States has a whiskey rebellion, so we're right there with you. He sure looks like his face was stretched too tight on his skull. This is 1808. 1808 is the Rum Rebellion. Well, I guess technically it runs from 1808 to 1810. And while this is going on, again, the leadership of the New South Wales Corps is effectively calling all of the shots in the colony. And the British are sending letters down there like, And effectively what the New South Wales Corps says is, we're not following Bligh. You need to send us somebody else. He's not surviving this mutiny. Yeah, you know, it's a cocky kind of thing. He was getting there, so yes, I think we could beat you in the booze rebellion. I don't know. The whiskey rebellion, I don't know. They never had as much success as the rum rebellion here did. Those guys all got shot to death by mercenaries at the head of a Revolutionary Virginian army, kind of. So, love some historical dad jokes? Absolutely. You have come to the right place. So, what is a good British overlord to do? Well, they send another governor. And his name is Lachlan Macquarie. And we're like, but why is the rum gone? The original Jack Sparrow. Alcohol is everywhere else, and we went to war over tea. This, by the way, is the handsome and dashing Lachlan Macquarie. And for all of my bluff and bluster about Lachlan Macquarie, this guy actually is a very competent leader. And for many purposes, this guy is going to be the guy that more or less fixes the colony issues in Australia. He is going to be, he's super snazzy. He's going to be the guy that really makes this work. He's the one that's going to figure out how to handle all of this stuff. The first thing that he's going to do is really start trying to get the concept that Australia is not just for prisoners. He's going to want to bring in actual colonists. He's going to want to try to start settlements that are not prison colonies. And what he's sort of doing here on the sly is that he wants to build colonies that don't need military oversight. You know, if you have a prison colony, you have to have soldiers there to sort of keep these people in check. But if you have full settlement colonies, you can just have population. And he sees the imbalance here is between the population that's effectively free citizens and the populations that's convict. And that's where he thinks the imbalance is. So to bring more colonists over, they're going to have to do a lot more exploring. And he himself is going to lead a lot of expedition, mostly in towards the interior of the continent, up into this region here. There's going to be a lot of mapping stuff done and a lot of exploration of potential places for settlement, potential places for natural resources. They're going to find some copper stuff, copper deposits in this place, which is a potential, sales item, trade good that they can use. Australia, not just for prisoners anymore. Moose, are you telling me that I'm about to get raided? Moose, by the way, is sort of like the guy that keeps his finger on the pulse of Twitch. Moose should have like I don't even know. Australia, a place the whole family can colonize. So he's going to explore. He's going to start bringing in more colonial people that are not prisoners. He's also going to bring in a bank. So one of the issues that was going on really, really badly was that the monetary system in Australia was effectively directly tied to the monetary system in Britain. And it was really hard for the colonial leadership to get anything done when they had to constantly send letters back and forth all the way back to Britain. So by bringing in a banking system into...
Are you not entertained?
Are you not entertained? Is that not why you are here? Sam Gushu, welcome. Thank you so much for the raid. How are you doing? How was your stream? What were you up to? Ooh, I love the nostril thing that we've got going here. That's an interesting view. Hey, Daniel Landerman, welcome. Welcome to all of you lovely raiders. My name is Shane McInnes. We are talking about Australia. I didn't know we had lost Australia. Are we taking it back? Does it need to be taken back? So yes, my name is Shane McInnes. I am a college history teacher by trade, and a couple of nights a week usually I'm here on Twitch hanging out with all of my friends in the Twitter or Twitchverse talking about history. On every other Tuesday night we do bum ba dum 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 dum. Sam, thank you so much for that follow, and welcome to the adventure. Sam, by the way, what were you working on? Can you share something with us that lets us know what sort of cool stuff you were doing? Also, feel free to throw in any sort of links to whatever you have, Sam. If you have Instagram links or Twitter links or ArtStation links or whatever you do that's you feel free to share it. Thank you so much for that raid. And welcome again to everyone else that came in. Oh man, I don't know how to say your name. Is Iantos? Isiantos? I apologize if I am making that really, really bad. Yes, so 82 followers. If you see right here, we are currently running a follower goal. When we hit 500 followers, we will do another History of Middle-earth stream. So I'm a giant history nerd, But I'm also a giant Tolkien nerd, and I'm doing basically history of Tolkien's fantasy world, and we've done 3 of those episodes so far. So if you like Middle Earth and you like Lord of the Rings or Tolkien's writings, you can check out the VODs of those. It's History of Middle Earth 1, 2, and 3. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, 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 dun. You were working on Sweet Child of God. Let's see what we've got here. Oh, wow. That's like a catfish mudkip hybrid. I appreciate it. I feel like that's something that might haunt my dreams, but I appreciate the tone that very much is catfishy. So that's an interesting, but it's good stuff. I like that a lot. Is that the kind of stuff that you do on your channel? You love Tolkien. Well, you've come to the right place, because I'll probably make really goofy Tolkien reference by the end of this show. I've already made one. I said that one thing drives out another in my brain, much like Barleyman Butterbur. So there will be more of those. So yes, we talk history. Tonight is viewer request night. We have a lot of viewers that requested we talk about the colonization of Australia. This lovely, well, let me do it this way. How do I move my hand so that it looks like I'm showing you Australia? This thing. That is Australia. So, yeah, we're talking about Australia. We have gotten to the point where the colonizing of Australia has more or less been settled by a guy named Lachlan Macquarie, who is this guy, this dashing young man in his British military outfit. So Lachlan Macquarie, he was a governor of the Australian colony of New South Wales, which was the biggest and most important colony for most of Australian history. So we're at this point, we're talking about how Australia sort of got its feet under itself as a colony. I can say this to everybody. If you have any questions about anything that we're talking about, if you want to ask something that you know is going to cause a rabbit chase, do it. If you want to make a bad pun or a dad joke or some sort of weird pop cultural reference or some sort of goofy thing, it doesn't matter. We're all friends here. Nothing is really off limits as long as we're all chill and cool with each other. So welcome to all of our new friends. I hope you're going to have a good time. Cool shoulder pads, though. Yeah. You weren't sure what you were expecting when we came in, but you think you like this place. Well, I'm glad you think you like this place. I hope that you find out that you like this place. Tell me how to say your name. Like, write me out some phonetics, because I always feel bad about saying people's names the wrong way. Tangents welcome. Yes, we have Vern here. Vern is the stream-appointed Lord of Tangents. It's a Locath from D&D. You don't tend to paint fish folk, but you can see more stuff here. Okay, I won't share it on stream. Everybody go give Sam the follow on the Instagram. Oh, wow, we have some lovely portraiture here. I love the impressionistic stuff that you've got going. Oh, that's great. Is some of this 3D rendering? That's really nice. I love like the sort of kind of like Dutch impressionism stuff that you've got going in some of these. This is very good stuff. Yes, everybody go give Sam. That's all 2D. Wow. That's very impressive. Iciantos. Good stuff. It's just godlike rendering. That is awesome rendering. If you're doing that all with 2D, that is insane. That is really friggin' good. And if Daniel Landerman says that you have mad skills, that is high praise indeed, because Daniel Landerman has mad skills. Okay. So, yes, Lachlan Macquarie, Australia. Here we go. So, we're talking about expanding. Australia is getting a lot of stuff going on. They're founding new cities. They're expanding into the central part of the continent. They're going to have a lot of stuff to do, though, because as they expand, they're going to continuously run into Aboriginal people. Aboriginal people lived all over Australia, and as we had discussed earlier, I'll give a little bit of a recap. People had been living in Australia for, at this point, 45,000 years, right? These native people had an indigenous culture that stretched back way longer than any of the European people. And when the Europeans began to expand, of course, this is going to cause cultural and spatial conflict. This is going to end up in some very unfortunate situations. And I do want to talk about one of them in particular, which is called the Black War. And this is going to take place in Tasmania from 1828 to 1832. This is pretty sad stuff. So Tasmania, of course, was or is a small island down here at the southern part of the continent, and it was a colony to itself. And the native people on the island were coming under increasing pressure from white European settlers, and this is going to come into armed conflict with the Black War. And what the leadership of the Tasmanian colony is really going to try to do here is literally round up all of the Aboriginal people on the island and put them into what is effectively a concentration camp sort of style. We might in the United States call this a reservation, but in reality, there really was not enough land designated for this for these people to live in their natural ways. So they were sort of being put effectively in prison. They weren't being allowed to live even close to the way that they normally did. And what this is going to culminate in is a particular event that they called the Black Line, where soldiers literally lined up across the island in sort of spread out little clumps and started at one end of the island and began to march across the island. And every Aboriginal that they found, they either arrested or killed if they gave them any resistance. And they literally walked across the whole island, rounding up all of the natives to put them in these big settlement camps. This is just sort of a small portion of a larger event that's happening across Australia. I chose that one because it's sort of a microcosm of the larger macro issue that's happening with the expanding settlements and how Australians and native Australians and Australian colonists are coming into conflict. But and here I was thinking that requesting a stream on the Emu War would be all memes. So I told you all when you said that you wanted to talk about the Emu War that there was not enough to talk about on just the Emu War. And I told you that we're going to talk about emu, meme-u, ha 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 ha. Yeah, the meme-u wars. The Emu War was a very brief period of time that has been latched onto in sort of popular culture and blown way out of proportion. There is no way I could have talked about that for 2 hours. It just would not be a thing that we could do. Plus, it would have very little context. I would have to back up a long time before that anyway to get to where I was making sense talking about the Emu War. So why not just talk about the whole thing and get a little bit of it all? So that's what I'm trying to do here. Memes are endless. Indeed, memes are always endless. You can always make another meme, right? Okay, so what else is going on in the early 1800s in Australia? And that is a push towards democracy. They're going to elect the first parliament in New South Wales in 1843. But this is not going to take effect for all of Australia. By this point, Australia had broken up into different colonies. New South Wales was no longer more, well, I mean, it was still the biggest one and it was still kind of in the driver's seat. But the government of New South Wales no longer held sway over the entire Australian island. And that means that whatever the New South Wales Parliament does has limited effect in other places. And when they give voting rights to people in New South Wales, this does not mean that voting rights are distributed across all of the different colonial territories. The first voting rights are only given to people that were not convicts, and it was only, of course, men voting. Well, I have a slice when you can have the whole pie. As are the infantry, yes, pretty much. Economic zones, yes, more or less economic zones. This is how the colonial boundaries were effectively drawn, was these larger cities that had the ability to self-sustain a little bit economically, and that's going to be kind of how they set up their boundaries. So this is going to continue a little bit, and by the time we get to about 1850, the government of Britain is going to start stepping in to allow more self-rule for the Australian colonies. And at this point, they are considered colonies, not a colony. So there are many of them. New South Wales, Victoria, Southern Australia, and Tasmania. I'm sorry, technically it's South Australia, apologies. And Tasmania are all going to get the ability to write their own constitutions in 1850. The British Parliament is going to pass something called the Australian Colonies Government Act. And this allows for these individual colonies to write up legal documents that describe the government within their colonies. And of course, during this period of time, you're going to start seeing voting rights being extended, because one of the things that the British Parliament really would like for the Australian colonies to do is mimic the British Parliament a little bit more, instead of being sort of quasi-military dictatorship in some of these territories, especially out in the West. The Western colonies were still very kind of rough and rowdy. So New South Wales and Victoria and South Australia and Tasmania were more populated. They had, at this point, more people coming in that were not just convicts. The Western territories were still being very densely populated with convicts. Again, the British are going to end up sending 161,000 convicts down to Australia between 1787 and 1868. So by the time we got to about 1855, most of the constitutional colonies in Australia are going to have voting rights for males that are 21 years or older. The controversy is whether or not to give former convicts voting rights. Most people say in the government that if you had served your sentence and you were effectively a free citizen, you could vote. If you were still a convict, not so. But if you made it, you were okay. But what about women? Well, as always, women's right to vote is going to lag. Women don't get the right to vote until 1894, and that's only in South Australia. It takes a lot longer to vote. Well, it takes about 7 or 8 years more. 1902 is when the, at that point, unified government of Australia passes all women's voting rights. But I should say that when I say all men and all women, here I very much do mean all white men and all white women. Aboriginal people did not have the right to vote at all. There were a few instances where some of these people had become citizens, but that had to effectively be done almost with a rule of the government that sort of extended citizenship to an individual. There were very few instances where large groups of Aboriginal people received citizenship and rights to vote. Usually these people were considered second class, very disparaged against, very legally repressed, and in some cases shot or thrown into settlements or prison camps. So we get some voting rights, and things are moving towards what we might consider a more established union. What is next? Well, you start getting then industrialization, because by the early 1800s, the industrialized world had really started kicking up over in Europe and the United States. It's going to take a little bit longer to get down to Australia, but by the time we get to the 1850s and then later in the 1870s, industrialization is going to show up in force. And one of the biggest companies, and I'm really, really happy that I found this next photo, one of the big companies that gets set up is actually a steamship company. And it gets set up, where's my clicker? Here we go. Boom. This gets set up in 1875. This is the Adelaide Steamship Company. And it is going to be responsible for a lot of the movement of people and trade goods around Australia. Steamships, of course, were humongous inventions that were going to revolutionize world trade. This particular company is going to be one of the largest companies in Australia. And they're still around today, by the way. They don't purely... I don't think they're even called Adelaide Steamship Company anymore. But they're still in moving stuff around. So this is a business that's been in operation now for almost 150 years. Pretty impressive stuff. I was really happy that I found this picture. I love showing old buildings. Old buildings like that just really kind of get me. Good sort of Baroque looking building there. Anyway, there we are. What about the railroad? Everybody knows the railroad. Well, the railroad shows up in 1854. And one of the things that they really wanted to do was build a big rail network, of course, that connected all of the big cities. That's going to get started in about 1892, not 1892, 1882. By 1889, you're going to have this giant network that connects Adelaide, Brisbane, Melbourne, and Sydney, the sort of the big four. You're going to start seeing telegraph show up by 1872. And then the real stuff is going to kick off where they discover stuff to mine. You're going to find copper, silver, and gold. This is mostly in these sort of mountainous interior regions that have a little bit more seismic activity where you could, get down into the earth a little bit easier. And of course, everybody loves gold and silver and copper. This is going to push railroad advances and telegraph advances. And of course, as people move, you're going to have spreads of not only industrialization, but also population. And this is going to bring us towards an interesting concept. If it ain't Baroque, don't fix it. Are there still mining barons ruling Australia today? I don't know. I know that there are some of the cities that still make a lot of money off of mining. And Snow White Lookalike says, yes, there are. So I know that especially around, here, let me turn the modern borders on. So if we zoom in over here on Melbourne, so Melbourne and then Sydney. Now, I don't know why I'm saying Sydney. But up here, there's a little city called, was it something with a W, like West Maitland? Or Matland. Where is it? Anyway, I'm looking up here. There it is, Maitland. Yes, there we go. So Maitland and Cessnock, these are both areas where they find some mining stuff. They also find oil here. In these regions right here. So I know that this is still sort of an industrial area today. But I confess to not know whether or not the big mining barons still run things. But Snow White Lookalike says they have massive political power in Australia, particularly closer to the middle and up north. So there we go. See, this is why I'm so glad we have native Aussies in the chat, because they can answer things that I don't know. And I get to learn too, because that's the fun part, right? So by the time we get to the late 1880s and early 1890s, one of the things that people in Australia are going to start talking about is unification. These various colonies have this idea that they could maybe come together and form a federal government, govern themselves together, pool their resources, pool their money, pool everything, and make a go at it as one big country. So they're going to start trying to write a constitution. They have something called the National Australasian Convention, which is in 1891, and they start writing the first draft of a constitution. So they had and they're all going to send like delegates to this big meeting, and they sort of understood that everybody that was going to sign on to this needed to sort of be on board from the get-go, right? You don't want to try to bring people in later on, but here's the thing. New South Wales did not really want to play the game if New South Wales wasn't going to run the game. New South Wales, Sydney, was still the most populated colony. It was still the most sort of established and best run colony at the time. It had the most money. It had the most credibility. It had the New South Wales Corps, which was the largest military regiment there. So New South Wales and their government wanted to be in control of any unification talks. All I know about Australia is that it wants to kill me, and all the women are beautiful, as we learned from the Olympics. All opals come from here, and it's both upside down and the future. Tuna, cheers to that. That's all I could say. I didn't watch the Olympics, so I will take your word for the beautiful women part. Snow White lookalike, there you are. Hey, Life of Mamba, welcome. So New South Wales wants to be in the driver's seat. The rest of the colonies eventually have to sort of acquiesce to this. Like, they understand that they're not going to be able to unify if all of them unify and New South Wales is sort of sticking out like a sore thumb. I'm doing okay right now. If you had asked me how I was doing on Sunday or yesterday morning, the answer would have been absolutely horrible. I talked with some friends and got some stuff straightened out yesterday, and now I'm just sort of emotionally tired and got through some tough stuff at work today. I'm doing better now. Otherwise, I would not be here hanging out with friends. I almost considered canceling both today and Thursday stream, but I didn't do it. But how are you? So they write the first draft of the Constitution, and everybody understands that this needs to have sort of unanimous approval for it to go into effect, and New South Wales just doesn't adopt it. All of the other colonies adopt it, but New South Wales doesn't vote on it. They just sort of go, we're not going to vote on it. We're going to just sort of let it die on the vine. We're not going to consider this. And so everybody is kind of just like, We have an adventure hat summoning and hugs. Thank you, Batbird. Adventure hat summons for conservation. I don't know what sort of conservation you mean here. Do you mean conservation, something of like animals or land? Or do you mean conservation as in taking care of artifacts and stuff of that nature, or cataloging stuff? Give me a bit more direction here. So for those of you that might be new, you might not know what this beautiful thing is. This is the adventure hat. I bring it with me when I go to travel, mostly because I can't get a suntan. I just go straight to sunburn. I have kind of thin hair up top because I'm probably going to eventually be bald. Hopefully that delays itself. Animals and land conservation. I'm going to have to think about... Oh! I can tell you a fun little adventure that Brittany and I went on. My wife. And Sam, I see the puppy. Let me get through the adventure hat, and then we shall call the puppy of war. So, if people so desire, they can redeem the adventure hat. summoning the adventure hat. And normally, if I talk about something in history that I've seen, or I reference a place that I have been, or I show you a photograph of something that I've seen in a museum, I will put on the adventure hat and we get to have some adventure. But you can summon the adventure hat, and I can tell you about some of the things that I've been on. I have traveled to a lot of different countries. I've been to a lot of places in Europe, a couple places in Asia, all over the United States. So, conservation. One of the things that my wife is a big fan of is bird watching and ornithology. And she actually spent a couple of summers doing ornithological work over in Sweden back when she was in college. So she has slowly but surely converted me to the way of the bird watching. And I sort of approach bird watching almost like it's live action Pokemon. Because in Pokemon, you can see the Pokemon and it shows up in the Pokédex, but then it's different if you actually catch the Pokemon. So when you're bird watching, you can hear the bird, and that's sort of like it's showing up in your Birdodex. But when you see the bird, that's when you get like the special little mark. So one of the things that we like to go do together is birdwatch, which is something that has not really been too affected by the whole COVID mess, because luckily the woods are usually not full of people. It kind of is just without the Pokeball, right? Yeah, so I'm not trying to catch the birds. I'm just trying to see the birds, right? And one of the things that we like to do is go bird watching. So a couple of years ago, when we actually could travel, last year we did effectively no traveling whatsoever. We went on a couple small adventures, but not really anything too big. But 2 years ago for our anniversary, we decided to go over to a city here in Mississippi called Natchez. But along the way, we stopped over at one of the national forests here in Mississippi, because there is a very rare species of woodpecker called the red cockaded woodpecker. Yeah. And the red cockaded woodpecker is incredibly endangered. It is to like that high threatened level of endangerment where they are in a very, very low amount of population. If they are found on land, there are conservation and preservation laws that kick in that prevent people from changing the habitat. They only live in pine trees that are 80 to 100 years old. So the pine trees have to be very, very tall and very old. So as you might expect with logging and expansion, there aren't very many places where original pine forests that are that old still live. So there is some here. It's a place called the Homachita National Wildlife Refuge in Mississippi. And we wanted to go see if we could see some of these red cockaded woodpeckers, because again, they are super duper rare. And it's a very large place. It's a very, very big chunk of territory. So what I did was I got on the phone and I called the wildlife biologist that works for the Homachita, and is a very, very excited to speak with me, man. I think that he was so excited that someone was taking interest in this, and we had a great chat a couple of times on the phone. And I asked him where we might be able to see some of these, and if there was a particular area that was easily accessible. And he gave us some directions, and we sort of went in, and again, we're walking through this sort of big open pine forest, and go down to the side of this hill where you see these markers is a bit vague, but we actually found the location, and we spent about 45 minutes to an hour walking around, and then we heard the red cockaded woodpecker sound. And that by itself was a moment where we got both very excited, because again, this is an incredibly endangered species. Very few of them left on Earth. And we heard them. And so we sort of immediately froze and started looking around. And again, they nest very, very far up the side of trees. And They hollow out holes in these trees. So we started looking for where their nests might be, and we located a couple of trees that had some holes. We didn't know if they're active, though. To know if the nest is active, you actually have to climb all the way up the tree and look in the hole. But we weren't going to do that because then you disturb the actual nest, and that is way bad for a super endangered species. So we sort of just froze and stood still and listened, and 3 of them flew up. And for about 25 or 30 minutes, we got to watch these 3 red cockaded woodpeckers fly around. And they're little guys. They're so cute. They're about yay big. They're black and white, and right here on the sides of their eyes, they have these little red flecks of feathers. And they are absolutely adorable. They make this very, very cute whistling noise, and that was a great moment in adventure history. And I really want to get back over there and see if we can catch sight of them again. But for that to happen, we're going to have to be able to stay overnight because it's several hours away. And, well, just to be honest, I don't want to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning here and then drive several hours to get there at daylight. So, why am I thinking of Woody the Woodpecker? I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Is it similar to the drop bear? Perhaps. I hear those are pretty dangerous and they'll come get you in Australia. So that was an adventure with summoning the adventure hat. So now I need to call the puppy, who might be asleep. I haven't heard her moving around very much lately. Let me give her a call and we'll get the puppy in. I do think she was asleep. Oh, here she comes. Come and see me. Oh, you got to stretch first. Here, let me put this up here so that you'll come and see me. Come here. Come here. Oh, there's the puppy. Oh yes, your loving audience wants to see you. Hello. So this is Kaylee. Hey, you want some sugars? Oh yes, puppy sugars. Hello. Oh, some more puppy sugars. Oh, more puppy sugars. Okay, that is so many puppy sugars. Oh my goodness. What are you up to? Come here. Come on. Come on. They want to see you. You look right here. Aw, there's the puppy. Okay, you want your toy back? There's your chicken. Now, I have offended the puppy because... and for those of you that might be new, there are rules for the puppy. She wants to show you the toy, but you are never supposed to actually take the toy from her. I took the toy from her so that I could get her to come up here on my lap. And now she is upset with me, and she will leave the room and not come back for a little while because I have taken the toy from her. Yes, no take. Only look. The toy is for appreciation. No touchy. I must compliment the toy, see the toy, but never touch the toy. Okay. So, Sam, that's the puppy. Her name is Kaylee. Kaylee Fry, named after the mechanic aboard the Firefly ship Serenity from the show Firefly. That's Kaylee Poo. And she is a big mess. And she was almost certainly asleep on the couch. I do have to leave the door open, though, because sometimes she hears me talking. And if she can't get to me, but she hears me talking, it freaks her out. So, she's a bit of a mess. Okie dokie. So, Australian unification. Where we left off, the National Australasian Convention of 1891, had put together a constitution. They had voted on it, and it did not get picked up by New South Wales. So they're actually going to wait for several years before they try this again. There is a second Australasian Convention in 1897. They write another draft of the Constitution. And that doesn't get supported either. There's still some quibbles about some stuff. But at this point, there were several things really pushing them towards unification. Most notably, Germany. German and especially German colonial interests had moved into the South Pacific, especially a lot of these islands out here. And Germany under Kaiser Wilhelm II was a very scary concept for the British world because of the threat of a large competitive navy. And the Australians believed if they unified, they would stand a better chance against any potential German encroachment. So after the second constitution gets shot down, they're going to immediately go back and start writing amendments to it. And they're going to work on this until they actually get something that will pass. It gets adopted by the representatives of all the convention in 1898, and they send it off to Queen Victoria. Once it gets to Queen Victoria, she's going to read over it. Parliament is going to look over it, of course. And in 1900, Parliament in Britain passes the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act, which officially recognizes the Constitution of 1898 as the official constitution of a newly unified and federal Australia. So the first thing you need to do when you have a new country is do some elections, right? And they are going to elect their first prime minister, and his name is Edmund Barton. Edmund Barton looks like this. Very proper young man. Good politician looking, very snazzy dresser. There you go. Your first PM of Australia. Ed Works. Did he go by Ed, or is Ed Works a nickname for him? I thought the first thing you did with a new country is start a war. Well, Tuna, you would not be too far off. So once they started their country, some of the first things that come through are bills that start creating military branches. So in 1903, they're going to pass an act that unifies all of the territorial armies into an official Australian army. It doesn't take too long for them to make the Royal Australian Navy, which is done just a few years later, 1911. And then in 1912, they make the Royal Australian Air Force. So they have a military within 10 years of them being an independent country. So they did not waste time on putting together the military. And one thing that they also want to do, and this is a lot of people that are more or less trying to make certain that certain political elements are not going to be able to sway the country as a whole. They decide that they want to build a new capital city that's not one of the existing capital cities. And they want to do this because they want to have the seat of the government outside of one of the existing cities. For example, nobody other than Sydney really wants the national capital to be Sydney. Just saying. So in 1903, I'm sorry, not 1903. Mainly because Sydney and Melbourne fought hard. Yes, they did. There's a lot of debate about where the capital is going to be. Will it be one of the cities? Who's going to get to build it? And they even get down to arguing about which companies are going to get the contracts to build stuff, which workers are going to get hired to do the building. It's a very big and very long and drawn out bureaucratic nightmare. But by 1913, we have the capital Canberra, which is the capital of Australia now. And again, it is not one of the... We can show the borders again here, and we'll zoom in on it. Just down here. Canberra. Come here, you. There we go. So again, and I don't know why it does this. I've still not haven't figured out why. When I look at Google Earth on my screen here, my computer screen, and then when I look at Google Earth that you all are looking at over here in OBS, the images don't line up. So like my mouse is in two different places. So I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, there's Canberra. Boop, 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 boop. New South Wales has it in law that the capital had to be in their borders. And they made it mainly between Sydney and Melbourne, right? Not NSFW. NSW. New South Wales. So this is the difference between New South Wales here and Victoria here. These are two different of the original colonies. And these were the ones fighting over where to put the capital. Like, as in kilometer wise, it's about 50-50. Did they go down like with a ruler? With the level of arguing that they made about Canberra, I would not be surprised if someone actually took out a tape measure. New South for work, pretty much, right? I would not be surprised if the Capitol building itself were not immediately equidistant between the two Capitol buildings of Melbourne and Sydney. That would not surprise me at all. Okay, so they build themselves a military. They build themselves a new capital city right in time for World War I to kick off. And I will be the first person to say here that troops from Australia and New Zealand are some of the most forgotten troops of World War I. They fought incredibly bravely and did a lot of work that the British would not have been able to do by themselves through the work of a group called ANZAC. And this is an acronym. It stands for Australia and New Zealand Army Corps. So these are soldiers that are being brought together from Australia and New Zealand and sent off to fight in World War I. Oh, they were totally clutch. These guys were a big deal. And I have some photos of the Anzac troops. Boop-a-da-boo. Here we go. And you could probably look at these guys and go, those guys look like they're from Australia. Could it be the hat? I think it's the hat. So these are Anzac troops. Right? It is the hat. I can confirm it is the hat. So Anzac troops are going to be incredibly important to the British field outside of Britain itself. They're going to be very heavily involved in the invasion of the Ottoman Empire, something called the Gallipoli Campaign. They're going to be very involved in fighting in islands in the Mediterranean, also in Africa. They're going to be sent to maintain British territorial claims in Africa, but they're also going to be at the big battles like the Somme, the Battle of the Somme. And we can bring this full circle and bring this back to Tolkien. Tolkien was at the Battle of the Somme, and so were Anzac troops. So we don't know. We could potentially hypothesize that Tolkien spoke with some Aussie guys, and maybe that did something to influence part of Lord of the Rings. We don't know. That's highly speculative. I'm not saying that definitely happened, but we don't know. It might have. The hat was specialized for the Anzac. There we go. They commonly had feathers in it. Had a lot of famous poetry. Yes, there are a lot of poets that come out of World War I. And when I taught world history and got to choose my own textbook, one of the things that I did was made them read a lot of the poetry, especially the stuff that came out of the British Army. And when I say British here, I mean all-inclusive British Army, including people like the Anzac. I'm also not saying it didn't happen. Can't confirm. Cannot confirm. Okay, so World War I was a really tough period of time for Australia because they were more or less capable of running themselves internally, but the British still controlled their external stuff. So the internal dealings of Australia inside of Australia were governed by the Australians. However, the foreign policy was still set by the British. So when Britain said, we need X number of troops and we need you to put together X number of army and send them here, the Australians were supposed to do that. And they didn't necessarily have very much of a say-so about it. Not that there weren't significant volunteers anyway. But one of the discussions that happened a lot during World War I here was whether or not to start conscription, which would be, forcing people to fight in the military. And there were some really hot debates about whether or not to start conscription inside of Australia. There were several times that the issue of conscription came up for a vote in Parliament, but it failed. It always failed. By the time it was looking like it was going to be necessary to sort of force conscription, the war wound down, and the need to conscript soldiers went away. Also, when the German Empire fell at the end of World War I, the tension that they posed sort of alleviated from Australia, which was a very welcome thing. A lot of areas were Irish-based. Yes, indeed. The thought that... and there were so many politics between the United Kingdom politics between Welsh and Scots and Irish and English, and how that translated to Australian politics with, expatriated groups of people. It's a big issue. It was actually why the Prime Minister lost his election, because he pushed conscription. Right. This was a very unpopular concept. The leadership was trying to basically do what the home country wanted, but the people were still really feeling this kind of independent streak, and they weren't really on board with the whole idea of getting sent to a war that they felt like they might be needed at home for, because, the Germans are right there. They might be attacked. So there we are. All right, so this brings us to what initially started the entire discussion of Australia, because after World War I, we get a very brief period of time where things are going okay, and then things collapse like crazy. The Great Depression sets in, and one of the big things that the Great Depression does, not just to places like the United States and Europe, but places all over the world, is that the Great Depression crushed trade. Countries were being very protective about where they sent their money. They were adopting policies that were trying to promote buying at home, and Australia made a large portion of its money off of trade. And it also got food subsidies from trade, which pretty much dried up during the Great Depression. And this is going to force Australia into being a little bit more independent, which is going to hurt because, well, they didn't necessarily have what they needed. And this is going to combine with this already sense of discontent between native Australian people and Britain. And I'm not going to say that there was necessarily a rift that had started with the whole conscription thing, but there was a moment in time where Australian people sort of stopped thinking of themselves as kind of British sovereign citizens for the most part, and they started thinking of themselves as Australian native citizens. And that's going to be exacerbated by the fact that Britain is stuck in the middle of the Great Depression. Let's also remember that Britain had to foot the bill for World War I, and their population was decimated. The population of Britain did not get back to the pre-World War I levels until like the 1980s because of how many men died. So Britain did not have the ability to protect Australia, and there was this sense of, we just busted our hump for you in World War I, and now you're going to kind of hang us out to dry when things get bad. This was a big bone of contention. I thought something else I know about Australia. After World War I, doctors solved murders. I'm missing the reference, Tuna. Yes, we're getting to the Emu Wars. So, By the time the Great Depression had swung full in the early 1930s, Australia was kind of stuck out by itself. And Dr. Blake Mysteries. Okay, I haven't seen any of that. And Australia has to try to find a way to create more food. It needs to farm more. It needs to grow and become more self-sustaining. But there's a problem. And the problem is that the native flora and fauna of Australia are not necessarily very commensurate with the idea of expansion into the outback. That's the pride I have in the show. Okay, so Dr. Blake Mysteries is shot in your hometown. You were almost an extra. That's awesome. Is it a good show? Should I give it a watch? Well, let me rephrase. Shall I put it on the list of things to eventually potentially watch in the future? Because goodness knows I don't have a lot of time. It's not bad. We'll give it a go. So, one of the big problems that a lot of farmers, especially out in Western Australia, start pointing at are emus. And emu or emu, I've been told that I say emu and it should not be said emu, it should be said emu. Okay, so emus are a problem because they eat crops. Yeah, so emu, there we go. His list looks like Captain America's and Winter Soldier. Yeah, I'm not going to deny that. Emus, they eat crops. People started growing crops. Emus eat crops. And the emus are a problem. And Canberra. That's where my English shows up because I want to say all of the vowels. Sorry about that. I know that it's clipped and all that fun stuff, but I still have the brain that's telling me that, hey, there's a vowel there. You should say that vowel. Yeah, you shorten everything. I'll remember that. Thank you for the comfortable correction. So, in 1932, the government of Australia is going to try to figure out what they can do about this emu problem. And normally, you would think that if farmers are having a problem, the person that would solve the problem would be from the agricultural department. And to be fair, the agricultural department had been the one sort of pushing people to try to find more farmland and trying to use the government power to kind of, create more arable land that would work. But somehow in the midst of all of this, the Secretary of War gets involved. And the Secretary of War is going to decide that the military can just go out into the bush and test out their new machine guns. And they have these new specific machine guns that are called Lewis guns, which look like this, which for some reason is not showing up completely on my image here. Can I zoom out a little bit? Where's my zoom? No, I can't zoom out any. Anyway, this is a Lewis gun. It's a machine gun. It shoots a lot of bullets really, really fast because they're big boys, right? And the idea here is that, look, the government can go out with the military and just shoot a whole bunch of emus. And this is going to be what they called the Emu War. This is in 1932. And so they start shooting at emus. Yeah, it's actually zoomed all the way out. I did the control minus, but it's already zoomed. I think I need to recrop my window in OBS. That's the problem. Usually I don't find nice big pictures like that. I have very, very small pictures and I have to zoom them in. That was one of the rare instances where it was too big for my window. So the Emu War, what do? Well, we go out and we start trying to shoot emus. And it turns out that, no, the emus did not shoot back, but it turns out that they do run away when you start shooting at them, which is apparently something that Lewis didn't actually, kind of plan for. It's not really a war unless they shot back. Well, see, here's the thing about an emu. They're big. They have giant claws on their feet, and they can kick the crap out of you. But they can also like run away and, you know, flock up on you. Emus are terrifying. Yeah, so there we go. They're over 6 foot tall. Right. They're huge. They weigh a lot. They've got really big legs. They can kick like a horse. An emu can kill a full grown man if they kick him in the head. They're not nice birds. They're also always angry. So they have the disposition of a llama. Anyway, I actually do have a pic of one of the emus that fell victim to the emu war. This is a photograph of a man who was bringing in an emu for a bounty. Your partner called just after your last request. Oh no. Sorry, Magus. Well, we are talking about the emu war. So the military goes out. They try to shoot all these emus. And it doesn't go so great. And so they try to go out again. And they try to kill these guys. And it doesn't really work any better. So what the government basically has to do is kind of turn this over to the people. And they're like, look, if you kill an emu, we will pay you a bounty for the emu. And initially they had all these grand plans like, oh, look, we can skin the emus and we can make stuff for the soldiers out of them and we can sell the meat and we can, you know, do all this stuff with the parts and because they can take like 8 bullets and still run. They're freaking tanks. Oh man. Yeah, so the emu wars themselves don't go over so great. But when they do turn this over to the sort of common citizenry, they do kill a whole bunch of emus. They end up killing about 57,000 emus over the course of the government program where you can turn in the bounties. But the joke here is that the military went out with machine guns to kill emus and they lost because they did not solve the emu problem. And some of them ended up getting hurt. So that's the joke. Did the Australians do the thing Indians did when the British tried the same? Pretty much. Just arm the emu, they will take each other out. Yes, your national bird won against you. So there we go. That's the emu wars. Because when the British tried to reduce the snake population with bounties, people started breeding snakes. Oh man. No, there were plenty of emus. There was an abundance of emus. They did not need to find more of them. Okay, so there's the emu war, which sort of corresponds with this entire discussion happening. But, you know, it was worth it to get there, I guess. But we do need to talk about the actual, what we might consider ending of Australian colony kind of setting. And this is going to be in 1942. This is, in fact, during World War II, whereby Japan and Germany both did a lot of damage to Australia. There were a lot of Australians that were captured by Japanese troops, tens of thousands of them killed. World War II was very brutal on Australia, and Australia was right there fighting. Lots of stuff in the South Pacific, lots of patrolling. They helped with some of the island hopping exercises that the United States did. They were very much involved with World War II. But here's the thing. When the Australians got involved in World War II, it was very clear that they felt the need to be independent. And when I say independent here, I mean they felt the need that they should be in the driver's seat of their own foreign policy. And this is something that the British had been considering for a while because of this sort of tension between whether or not Australia could run its foreign policy or the British still did. But in 1942, the British Parliament is going to pass something called the Statute of Westminster. In 1930s, the British government's going to pass the Statute of Westminster, which allowed the Australians to set up their own foreign policy and become de jure rulers of the continent itself. And Australia is going to ratify that in 1942 with the Statute of Westminster Adoption Act. And at that point, Australia becomes a sovereign nation to itself. It can govern itself. It can set up international boundaries and things like that. Now, much later, in 1986, there's another bill that sort of kind of severs the Commonwealth status stuff, but they're still very closely allied with the British. So 1942 is sort of the end of the last little bit of colonial Australia, and that is where we can also end tonight. Imagine if we never colonized Australia and emus evolved into highly intelligent bird humanoids. In the comics, it's the kangaroos that become intelligent. Yeah, gotta love some Tank Girl stuff, right? A group of emus is called oh, ha, ha, ha. That's emos. Oh, Gerard Way. I actually liked My Chemical Romance music. And they would argue you to your face that they are not an emo band. The members of My Chemical Romance hate being labeled as an emo band. I wish they would make more music. Yes, Gerard Way of Umbrella Academy. You have another fun fact about Australia. You may share as many of those as you would like. Snow White lookalike. You are always welcome to share those. Would they cry while being called emo? Kelly, I guess that would be the ultimate kind of a test there. We were the first country to shoot in World War I in Australia. Really? I am not familiar with this. Enlighten me. It's not my fault the first result for emo band on Google. They would argue with you, but they get lumped in a lot. Dashboard Confessional is an emo band. Man, now I'm going to have to break out like all of the old stuff from like 2003 and 2004. What's all that music? Like Fall Out Boy and all of that fun stuff. Oh, good times. So that is the end of what I had prepared for our discussion here on colonial Australia. Let's see. We got the news about going to war to Germany, and a German ship was in the harbor in Melbourne. They were ordered to turn around, and when they didn't, Australia shot. Hey! Well, there we go. I'm going to add that to the mental collection, and I get to teach about World War I in just a few weeks in my World Civ 2 class. It hurts me greatly that you consider 2004 really old. Dude, we're not spring chickens anymore. We are not the babes we used to be. We're getting on up there. Nearly 2 decades, yep. Indeed. Planking was a decade ago. Oh man, now that's horrible. All right. Oh, absolutely. I love that stuff. Thank you so much for sharing those, Snow White. That was great. That was very much great. I appreciated all of those. You're reminded every day. All right, so I have seen a Kelly Howlett in the stream. Kelly Howlett, hast thou decided topic for your point redemption? By the way, you just summed up 6 months of a uni course in 2 hours. Well, I hope that it was 1, accurate, 2, enjoyable, and 3, worth your time. I should save up for that some point. I was thinking how awesome I think it is that the stars of Crocodile Dundee are still married, but upon fact check, they divorced in 2014. Sad face. It was. You had fun. Good stuff. The thing about it is that I can't give you a magical piece of paper. Also, we made a lot of money off of wool and mining. Yes. What can you do for African history? Mythology? I can do all sorts of African history. We can talk about sub-Saharan African history. We can talk about Egyptian history, history of the Nile River peoples. We can do mythology of, I would break that between Mediterranean Africa and sub-Saharan Africa. We could do cultures like the Bantu people that had a large migration that went on to affect a lot of people. We could do Swahili culture. We could do Mali. We could do Songhai or Ghana or Great Zimbabwe. You've heard way too much about the Egyptians and the Nile. You want West African. We can do West African stuff. Do you want to talk about like West African countries like Ghana and Mali, big empires that established themselves around the 800s AD and carried through to about the 1300s AD? We could do, yeah. I teach all of that stuff. I'm comfortable with all of that stuff. Did you want to do specifically mythology, or did you want to include just larger cultural issue stuff, or did you want to do more of a historical, kind of like a political breakdown? Or we could do a little bit of both. We could just do like history of empires in Western Africa, and we could talk about all of that stuff, and I could throw in some mythology stuff. No, withdrawal. Yeah, I like Western African stuff. Talk about Mansa Musa. That's really cool history. Sub-Saharan trade routes, conversion to Islam. Have you done a stream about the Zulu yet? I have not. Zulu are South African, though. So the Zulu are down here in this region, down here in what is modern day South Africa and Angola, stuff like that. That's fine. So for new people, for Twinkie Push, yes, Mali Empire is pretty interesting. I like Mali. That's fine. That's fine. So do you want to do Zulu? I mean, we could do Zulu. Like, if you just want to do the history of the Zulu, that'd be awesome. We could totally do that. There's also a movie called Zulu that may or may not be about them. There's an old BBC, maybe TV series or like movie series that was about Shaka Zulu. So Kelly, are we doing history of the Zulu? Because I'm totally down with that if that's what you want to go with. Native American, European ancestors too. 85% Western African. Yeah. You would love to just hear about Africa other than Egypt, but not about the white people. That is a long discussion. But if you want to, I can do a regional overview of African peoples. And we can talk about a little bit of the people from all over the place. We will do all sub-Saharan Africa. So we can do a little bit in the south, a little bit over in the west, a little bit over in the east. We won't talk about Egypt at all. We'll do everything sub-Saharan, and we'll keep it before white colonization. Okay, there we go. So we will do the history of sub-Saharan Africa prior to white people showing up. And we'll do a little bit of a regional spreading, and I'll pick a few people that I think are really cool. And yes, and we'll talk about religion, absolutely. Yeah. Awesome sauce. Okay. So that's what our next viewer request will be. At the end of that episode, we will have another vote on what to talk about. So that will be scheduled. Let me see. Is that going to be? So normally that would be the 16th. But I'm not going to stream that week at all. That is my week of spring break. So heads up, from the 15th to the 19th, I won't be doing a viewer request or an adventure in history on Thursday night, because I want to take an actual week off and rest. This world has been kicking my booty lately. They always skipped Africa and India and China. Oh yeah, they always do. I don't in my World Civ classes, by the way. I teach a whole class. I teach several classes on India, several classes on China, and several classes on Africa. So I don't. Okay, so now I have to decide if I'm going to try to get this ready for next Tuesday and do 2 viewer requests in a row. I'm going to say no. I would like to entertain that, but I'm going to say no. So this will be on March the 23rd. March 23, we will pick up with viewer request, and we will do history of sub-Saharan Africa, and it'll be cool. You can't sing, one word in Hawassa, and it's maybe 5 in Swahili. I know Jumbo Wana. But that came from the movie Cheetah, which is super white savior-y. We got China mainly, but not so much India and Africa. See, I love world history, and I really do like talking about world history. So there we are. Okie dokie. So I am done. We have chosen our angle. We have chosen our topic. We know what we're going to do. By the way, I will be back on Thursday night at 1900 Central Standard Time, and we will be talking about Rome and a lot of wars, because on Thursday nights we're going through history in chronological order. So we will be talking about Rome between the year of about 100 and about the 60s or so. Lots of wars, lots of really big things that set stuff up. Rome's hobby was just wars. Well, it gets a lot of Civil War stuff going on, a lot of nasty stuff going on. There's an awesome episode of QI where Trevor Noah's a guest. Oh, that would be really cool. So he's from South Africa, and his parents were in a lot of stuff. You know all this stuff, though. All's fair in Roman war. There we go. So I am done for the night, but if you all have any other point redemptions that you want to bring up or anything like that, you are welcome to do so. Otherwise, I know where we're going to go raid. We're going to go raid friend of the stream, Daria, and bring some of our love towards her awesome artwork. Anybody have anything out on the way? Anybody? I will drain the last little bit of my tea, which has gone stone cold. All right. Not seeing anything else, so I will click the button here, and we will go raid Daria. Daria is and there we have what's in the news. And I will now cancel the raid. You have a question? Hit me with a question, and I'll talk about what's in the news. There is stuff in the news. I can't say what I'm supposed to say, Snow White, because I try to keep things here on the stream PG. And I can't drop the F-bombs. But I will see your face again on Thursday. Or I hope that I will. So stuff in the news. Let's talk about Africa. there were about 300 women and mostly young school children that were abducted by a terrorist group in sub-Saharan Africa. I believe that they just got released today. I'm double checking. Yes. Okay. So this was in the country of Nigeria, one of the largest countries in Africa. I think it actually might be the second largest country in Africa now that Sudan broke up. Let me throw up the borders here and we'll zoom in on Nigeria. Nigeria is going to be a powerhouse country within the next probably 50 or so years. They're going to be this is Nigeria, by the way, one of the most economically powerful countries on earth if they get their act together. They already have a massive population. Anyway, there are a lot of problems, especially here in northeastern Africa along the border with the country here, Chad. This region is a hotbed for terrorist activity, especially violent Islamic terrorist activity. Nigeria itself is actually a very Christian country. It is one of the largest Christian populations on earth. Within about 10 or 15 years, their population of Christians is going to be higher than the United States population of Christians. And this has brought about a lot of religious tension, but there's also a lot of ethnic tension. Africa is not just black people, which is one thing that students in the United States do not get taught. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of ethnic groups inside of Africa. And these tribal and ethnic differences go back hundreds, if not thousands of years, and they are still very much real. But the terrorists that abducted them seem to be from a kind of an unaligned group. This is going to be a pretty big mess that started on Friday, but apparently they were released earlier today, which is a really good situation. But the issue here is partially because of the big economic disparities in Nigeria. There is a massive gap between people that have and people that do not have in the country of Nigeria. The vast majority of people are very, very poor, and the people that run the country and that are in the sort of larger embezzlement game of the Nigerian government are fabulously wealthy. The military has an incredibly large amount of power because they're also involved in smuggling and arms deals under the table. And without a lot of change, Nigeria is going to continue to be in a really rough place. But they have so much promise. They have an amazing amount of untapped natural resources. They have some of the largest natural deposits of things like rare earth metals that are, of course, being used all the time for things like batteries and computer chips. They have an incredibly big population, and they could be an economic powerhouse in the country if they would figure out a way to get their government fixed. Now, they have elections, and the elections have been to a certain degree fair, but it's not a stable country for the most part. Especially the further away you get from big cities, the less stable it is. And abductions and stuff like this are happening at a growing rate because the economic crisis that's been brought about by things like COVID has really put a hurt on Nigeria. So that's what's going on in the news. I was trying to keep an eyeball on that today. All right. There we go. Now, let us go and raid our friend Daria. And I'll hit the button. And now we will do all of the goodbyes and such. So thank you all so much for all of the love. Thank you, all of you who subscribed. We got several subscribers tonight. Thank you for Sam, if you're still here for the big raid. That was very much appreciated. Thank you, all of you that cheered. That was above and beyond the call. Thank you for all that participated in the chat. A lively chat always does make this a more fun stream. I hope you all have an amazing next couple of days, and I will see you all on Thursday. So have a great one. Oh, by the way, before we go, when we raid, our battle cry is adventure, and you can throw all of your adventure hats at Doria, and she will, of course, appreciate those. So thank you all, and I'll see you next time.